Today on the channel, in honor of 41,000 subscribers, it's the return of the Kyle Peterson Top 10. And in today's Top 10 countdown, we're counting down my top 10 WWF Hasbro tag teams of all time.
And the spirit of Ultimate Warrior will run forever!
Kyle here, and welcome back to the channel for another edition of the Kyle Peterson Top 10, a Thursday tradition here on the channel. As every single Thursday, we're counting down my top 5, and occasionally, like today, my top 10 favorites of something. And today, in honor of 41,000 subscribers to the YouTube channel, thank you to everybody that has subscribed, and if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Make sure you do subscribe to the channel. But in honor of 41,000 subscribers, we're counting down my top 10 favorite WWF Hasbro tag teams with one twist. Now, of course, many traditional tag teams in the Hasbro series, and then we get some that weren't like the others. And of course, when I say the others, we're talking about Demolition, the Rockers, LOD, the Nasty Boys that came on traditional 2-pack cards. But we also got the Steiner brothers, of course, on single cards. And Ankeny, Big Boss Man. So those will count as well. Anybody that was a traditional tag team, but with one twist in the countdown, stay tuned for that. But of course, this is my list. Put your list in the comments down below. Start at number 10, work your way at number 1, number 1 being your favorite Hasbro era tag team. And then of course, don't forget to put your list in the comments down below and make sure you put them in order. That's the hard part. That's the fun part. That's the challenging part. So without further ado, let's get after it at number 10. We begin the countdown at number 10, and number 10 is probably one of the most bought Hasbro tag teams of all time. It felt like everybody of a certain age bracket had these, even if they weren't a big fan of wrestling, weren't really deep into the line, it felt like they had these, and these ones never really held their value big time, but they are staples of the Hasbro tag teams. And for me, coming in at number 10, who is it? Of course, it's Shawn Michaels. It's Marty Jannetty. It is the Rockers. Now, right off the bat, we got 2 jumper positions here, and I guess, you know, it's just, I don't know. I've just never been a jumper guy, I guess is what I'll say. When I classify jumper, if they have their feet together, they're a jumper to me. So never a big fan of that. Felt like it makes sense, though, with the Rockers being high flyers. It always kind of felt like the high flyers got this kind of staple body mold over the years, and we're going to see more of it, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending who you ask, in this countdown here. But the Rockers were great to have, and of course, later on, we got better Shawns, we got better Martys, and I ended up using these guys as kind of jobbers enhancement talent in my Fig Fed. So that's kind of what brought them to the dance of the top 10, is the versatility of these two, and that's how I use them. But of course, when you only had them, they were what they were. They weren't really going to be tippy-top tag team for me. It just wasn't going to happen, but always fun to play with, always fun to have on hand, and once again, use in later years as enhancement talent. So the Rockers coming in at number 10 in the top 10 list. The list carries on now at number 9. And number 9, we go to, of course, Hasbro. We go to the tag team known as the Headshrinkers. Samu and Fatu, of course, the Headshrinkers. I remember them first as a Samoan SWAT team, but always loved these two as far as playability goes. Maybe I should walk that back a little bit. Didn't like, once again, the jumper aspect here, but I did like having another tag team in my collection. I like the savage nature of the Samoan SWAT team Headshrinkers, of course, over the years. But I've talked about it before. In my childhood figure fed, I teamed these guys up with Superfly Jimmy Snuka and Giant Gonzalez. They were quite the stable, quite the wrecking crew in my playing days. And it made these guys, who maybe by themselves wouldn't have been that great, but when you put it with Giant Gonzalez and Superfly Jimmy Snuka, there was a lot of fun with the Headshrinkers. So because of that, they come in at number 9. Next up at number 8, we go to a tag team much like the Rockers. It seems like everybody had at one time or another. And then, of course, these were even re-released later on with some changes, of course. But they did get 2 releases in the Hasbro years. Who are we talking about? Well, we're talking about my dad's favorite tag team of all time. We're talking about Luke and Butch. We're talking about the Bushwhackers. Very good figures here. Of course, needed to be in this line. Never a problem with it. However, never tag team champions in my figure fed. Much like the Rockers, they were kind of just there. They were more enhancement talent for me in my playing days. But a lot of fun here. There's no denying who these two are. Very, very iconic Hasbro figures still to this day. Very fun figures to this day. And a lot of good time spent with the Bushwhackers. Like I said, my dad's favorite tag team. He always dreamed they would lick his face. Never happened, unfortunately. Hopefully one day Luke comes around and I can introduce him to my dad. My dad will just put his face out there and Luke will just lick him to just crazily lick him. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But the Bushwhackers, a very, very iconic tag team. We all know that. Coming in, of course, at number 8. We've reached the number 7 spot, and the number 7 spot is our first little twist and turn, and we got a couple of them here in this countdown. As we go to 2 iconic wrestlers, 2 big men, of course, some may say 2 twin towers in Ankeny and the Big Boss Man. Now, however, my twist here is I used Big Boss Man Part 2 over Part 1. Even as a little kid, I did not like that Big Boss Man figure. For whatever reason, I was not a big fan. However, myself and others out there, I think, used that Big Boss Man with this Big Boss Man as a tag team at one point in time. I think we all did that. But when I do the Twin Towers later on, once I had this Boss Man, this was my Twin Towers. I really love this Big Boss Man figure, an iconic figure, and way better than the first version. So the Twin Towers, a big, powerful tag team. Absolutely loved their match back in the day. It was at Saturday Night's Main Event, I believe, against Hulk Hogan and the Macho Man. There was just something about the Twin Towers as a kid. I absolutely loved them. Akeem, one-man gang, possibly the most underrated big man of all time. And then, of course, we know all about the Big Boss Man through many gimmicks over the years. Just a fabulous, fabulous tag team during their short run. Always enjoyed them in my Fig Fed, and that's why they're coming in here at number 7. Next up, we're at number 6, and I gotta believe if I would have had the number 6 tag team as a kid, they'd be a lot higher on this list. However, it's kind of with rose-colored glasses a little bit on this one here. But what am I talking about? I'm talking a tag team that I didn't think even actually existed as a kid. I'm talking about the Nasty Boys, old Knobs and Sags here. Man, oh man, all-timers in the Hasbro day. However, coming off Greg Hammer Valentine Rhythm and Blues, which I could never found, I assumed I could never find it as a kid. And I just assumed, I just couldn't find it. And then the Nasty Boys, saw them on the back card, never found it. My dad and I were in a lot of stores as a kid, never found these guys either. So I said, geez, just like Greg Valentine, just could never find them. And then many years later, I get the internet, I find out these do exist, and I find the Greg Valentine never existed at retail. So I learned as I went along when the computer and the fancy internet came. But man, oh man, if I would have had these Nasty Boys as a kid, they would have been feuding with the Steiners, Demolition, LOD, Bushwhackers, you name it. And one thing about these two of the greatest playability-wise Hasbro figures of all time, would have just been an amazing playability tag team in my Toy Fed, in my Fig Fed, in my tag team series. I really feel like a little bit of my childhood was missed out by not having these Nasty Boys as a kid. But of course, many years later, I did pick them up for the first time, and they are absolutely amazing. And like I said as well, if I would have had these as a kid, probably a lot higher on the countdown. But as what I know now, they're coming in at number 6. We've reached the halfway point of the countdown. Are you ready? Do you got your list together? Put it in the comments down below, and make sure you do subscribe to this very YouTube channel, as every Thursday we got a countdown video. But now, this next tag team here, they came on single cards, but you brought them together like a natural disaster, some may say. We got Earthquake, we got Typhoon, we got the natural disasters, and something special. Much like Big Boss Man and Akeem, getting a giant, big tag team was an amazing shot in the arm to my figure fed as a kid. And I still remember the day seeing these for the first time at Toys R Us. It was such a magical thing when you were a little kid and you went to the store and you would see new wrestlers. You couldn't believe your eyes. You do one of these right there in the aisle. Is this real? Am I really seeing this? Is this the natural disasters? And it truly was. And man, oh man, was this a big day for my figure fed. Like I said, love 2 big giant figures. Lots of good feuds with them and throughout the years in my Hasbro Fig Fed. Just a fabulous, fabulous one. One that wrote itself, Earthquake and Typhoon. Absolutely love the natural disasters. And that's why they're coming in at number 5 in my top 10 tag team Hasbro countdown. Getting closer and closer to the top spot at the number 4 selection right now. And number 4 is that twist. That's a twist, and you can put your twist in your countdown. At the end of the day, it is your countdown. But number 4 was not a traditional tag team. They were on a Survivor Series tag team together one time. However, I brought these two in my Fig Fed together, and it was a game changer from day one. And who are we talking about? We're talking about Rick the Model Martel and the Warlord. Yes, not a traditional tag team, not a tag team like the Bushwhackers, the Steiners, things like that, but one I brought together into my Fig Fed that really changed the game, and one of the most successful tag teams in my tag team Fig Fed as a little kid. Absolutely love these two on their own, but when I brought them together, it just worked out, and I really based a lot of my playing and time together off of Hercules and Paul Roma, of course, Power and Glory back in the day, who were teamed with them in a Survivor Series team, of course, but that's how I used them. You had Warlord as the great power moves guy here, and I had Rick Martel, more of a high flyer than he actually was, but they would do a lot of the Power and Glory moves. They were a big tag team in my Fig Fed, like I mentioned. Just a fun one that on their own, great figures, maybe Intercontinental title, maybe Warlord feuding for the world title, but never going over the Warrior or Hogan or whoever. But you bring these two together, an amazing tag team that won the tag team titles many times in my Fig Fed. A fun one, and maybe we all had one of these teams like this that we brought together that just worked for us, maybe not everybody else. But this one, going back to my playing days, an all-time favorite. Coming in at number 4 is the Warlord and Rick Martel. We're down to the final 3 in business, finally picking up. It's getting real serious right now. And number 3, possibly the greatest tag team of all time. If you told me this is the greatest tag team of all time, I couldn't really argue with you. It's one man's opinion, one girl's opinion, whatever it may be. But one of the greatest tag teams of all time, and one I am desperately wanting, of course, in the Mattel Elite line. And hopefully with San Diego Comic-Con around the horizon, we get to see some images of these guys. Who is it? Well, it's two brothers named Rick and Scott. They don't do drugs, as we do know in the theme song. But Rick and Scott Steiner, two great playability characters, two guys that came on single cards, as we know, but two of the all-time greats in the tag team division. And you could argue Scott Steiner in the singles division as well. But such another shot in the arm in my Figure Fed as a kid playing with these. There was so many new matchups that happened because of this. Would have loved to feud them with the Nasty Boys. Didn't happen, but their matches in my Fig Fed against the Demolitions, the Legion of Dooms, the Rockers, you name it. Just two of the all-time greats. So happy to get the Steiners. Up until this point, I was using my Galoob Steiner brothers in my Fig Fed with my Hasbros, as I mixed those in from time to time. You had to use your imagination as a kid, and the Steiner brothers, really my favorite tag team that weren't the LOD when I was a little kid. So absolutely love the Steiners in the Hasbro line, so much so they're at number 3 in the top 10 countdown. Longtime followers of the channel probably know my top 2 favorites, but we're going to do them. We got to do them for science, of course. But the number 2 selection, well, here comes the Axe. Here comes the Smasher. Oh, and here comes the Crush. It's Axe, Smash, and Crush. Of course, Axe and Smash being on a solo card. Later on, Crush and Smash being together on a tag team card. Just absolutely amazing. You guys know me, sucker for face paint, a sucker for Demolition. Absolutely loved this back in the day, and possibly the longest reigning tag teams in my Figure Fed in my playing days as well, as these guys, Axe and Smash, came right off hot at Series 1. You got to go full face paint Series 1. You got to get the Warrior out there. You got to get Axe and Smash. You got to get after it right away, and that's what they did with Axe Smash. And I remember having Axe before Smash, just really getting deep in my craw. Jake the Snake, I think I had Warrior, Jake the Snake, and Axe first, and then I found Hulk Hogan, and somewhere Smash got in the mix, but it was great to bring these 3 together. And then of course later on when we got Crush in that tag team set, I remember being a little peeved I had to get another Smash, but it was worth it to get the Mass, worth it to get Crush. Just one of the greatest playing tag teams of all time, and one of my favorite tag teams of all time. Demolition coming in hot at number 2, and like a young Highlander, there can only be one. What's the number 1 selection? Stay tuned. Here it is. We've reached the top spot, the number 1 Hasbro WWF tag team of all time, as voted by me. Once again, put your list in the comments down below. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Turn on the old notification bell, as we got videos every single day. But I think everybody watching this, if you've watched this channel, you probably know what number 1 is for me. Of course, it's the Hawk. It's the Animal. It's the Legion of Doom, and I probably fell to my knees in just a puddle of tears when I saw these for the first time as a kid. I distinctly remember walking in, you'd walk through that little maze when you walked into Toys R Us for the first time, and they'd have kind of display walls of 4-foot sections. And I'll never forget the big 4-foot section and seeing the LOD and just absolutely losing my mind, because face-painted wrestlers as little Kyle were just everything. They were everything to me. The Ultimate Warrior and the Legion of Doom, bringing them together in the same toy line. Oh, it was almost too much. My heart's getting palpitations just talking about it here. But to see Hawk and Animal for the first time, getting those off, there was no way I was leaving. I've never shoplifted in my life, but if my dad would have said, Kyle, you're not getting this, I would have said, I don't care what I'm doing. I'm putting it under my shirt. I'm just going to do a dead sprint out the door. I'm going to find a way to get out there. Luckily, my dad understood the power of the Road Warriors, the power of Legion of Doom, and let me pick this one up. But man, oh man, the hours of playability, and we talked about Demolition earlier. They were the longest reigning because they were there for so much longer than the LOD. But once the LOD kicked in, they was pretty inconsistent. They lost a match. It happened very, very few times for me. Absolutely game changer to my Fig Fed. Now, a lot of people complain about this LOD, saying they wish the spikes were removable. And I guess in hindsight, I wish they were as well. But it never affected my playing as a little kid. Didn't matter anything to me that these spikes were on here. Had no issue with them at all. I guess, used my imagination that they weren't there. I don't know, but it didn't bother me at all that they were here. I was just so happy to have the first ever Road Warriors and Legion of Doom figures in my collection. You guys know I wasn't a Remco guy. I was too young for Remcos, so I didn't even know they existed at that time, of course. So to me, the first ever LOD figures of all time, and just absolute game changers for myself and probably many of you watching this as well. So the LOD coming in hot at number 1. And once again, put your selections in the comments down below. Don't forget about the Patreon for early access to these videos and all the other videos on both YouTube channels. Check out the Patreon if you've been missing out on that. A lot of fun stuff going on over there every single day. Of course, you can support the channel as a member of the Patreon, as you guys know. You can also support channelprowrestlingtees.com, search Kyle Peterson. And don't forget, of course, my book, The Complete Guide to the Jakks Class Superstars series, available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble as we speak. Appreciate the support over there. And then, of course, you can follow along on social media, SirPaul64 on the X, _Kyle_Peterson on Threads, and on Instagram. So for the LOD and the rest of the top 10, I'm Kyle. See you guys all real soon.